I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Audit and Internal Controls Committee of the Nassau County Interim Finance Authority. It is 6:10 p.m. on September 21st, 2023. We have a brief agenda for the committee. I'll point out that other members of the board who are not on the committee are present, which may and certainly can limit the extent to which they might ask questions in the full meeting if they ask them now, if they have any. With that, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes of our previous meeting, which has previously been provided to the committee members and the board.
Motion to approve?
It's been made.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That motion and the passes and the minutes are approved. The second item is to submit, to be clear, NIFA's 2024 budget and multi-year plan. We actually have our own multi-year plan, which is rolled into the overall financials of the county. And so, Carl, you're going to present that to us in brief form. Again, we may or may not have a lot of questions because we've seen this in advance and had an opportunity to read and digest the materials prior.
Thank you and good evening. NIFA approves the financial plan about this time each year, as it must be included in Nassau County's multi-year financial plan. NIFA's financial plan must also be filed with New York State's Public Authority reporting system at the earliest possible date before the fiscal year commences on January 1st. The proposed financial plan for 2024 through 2027 that I'm submitting for your approval is substantially consistent with the financial plan adopted by the board last year, with a small increase primarily in statutorily mandated expenditures in 2024 only. Totals for NIFA's core operating expenses in 2024, 2025, and 2026, respectively, are the same as what was approved by you last year. These amounts reflect current staffing levels, future pension contribution rates announced by the state comptroller, and projected increases in health insurance premiums in accordance with estimates provided by the State Department of Civil Service. The category of statutorily mandated expenditures fluctuates in the even years between $625,000 for 2024 and $550,000 for 2026 in order to provide for the mandated biennial operation audits of 3 Nassau County public benefit corporations and the odd years of $50,000 for 2025 and 2027, where no operation audits are statutorily required. I want to emphasize that NIFA remits to the county all unspent core and statutorily mandated appropriations. All other components of the proposed financial plan remain largely unchanged from the financial plan under which we're currently operating. The assumptions that we use to develop our financial plans are in your materials immediately following the documents that I'm currently presenting. Can I answer any questions regarding the proposed budget and the financial plan?
Only one, which is I believe we're expecting lower expenses for legal representation because we're running out of union contracts to have to approve. I think we're assuming next year will be less than this year because we're down to less.
On the consulting level.
On the consulting,
legal
on the
and consulting,
right,
yes.
which is something you would expect. And those are not statutorily mandated expenses. Obviously, what's mandated is, I think for the public, the state senate passed legislation a few years ago that requires us to do these every other year audits. We could theoretically schedule them out going forward once we get a few under our belt, that there's some every year and not every 2 years, but we could, it's hard enough to find the firms to do them the right way the first time, and now that we've got them in a routine, we probably don't want to change that right away.
This time around, we'll have more lead time so that we can
Right,
develop.
last time we had
and so
90
forth. Yes.
or 120 days.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I don't have any questions. Any? No? Dr. Zaza? Was there a motion to approve this financial plan for NIFA, the NIFA financial?
Motion to approve.
Made.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 I vote aye as well. The motion passes and the plan is passed to the full board for approval. With that, a motion to adjourn this committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The committee meeting is adjourned.
So now we will move into the regular session of the NIFA board meeting for September 21st, 2023. I think what I would do is first consider the approval of the minutes.
I'll move those.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next, I would make a request that we move into executive session so that we can consider contract negotiations as permitted under the open meetings law.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we move into executive session to consider those. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we return from executive session and advise the public that no actions were taken, no decisions were made during the course of that executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll resume the regularly scheduled meeting. The first two items, one is the minutes of the public hearing held July 13th, and the other are the actual minutes of the meeting. Both of those minutes have been made available to all of the members. If there are,
Move them both.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, now we can move on.
Mr. Chairman, the third item on the agenda is for us to consider the item that was considered at the earlier meeting of the Audit and Internal Controls Committee, at which all members of the board were present. I would move that we approve the actions of that committee and approve the submission of NIFA's 2024 budget and 2024 to 2027 financial plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, next item is the consideration of the memorandum of understanding for approval regarding the proposed contract between the county and the CSCA. We'll call on Gary DeLaverson to provide an overview of the contract.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Directors. So the contract that you have in front of you is with the CSEA, which is the union representing the bulk of the administrative staff of the county, representing a little under 5,000 employees. This is the fourth of the collective bargaining agreements that you've had this round, leaving two more, assuming that you approve this one. This agreement was negotiated last month. It was approved by the rank and file of the union. It went to the county's legislature, I guess, last week, the committee, and then the full legislature earlier last week, was approved there as well. The agreement itself is a little different from the other agreements that you've seen in that rather than simply being an 8.5-year contract, this contract is 13 years long. In other words, there's an extra 4.5 years. The first 8.5 years are consistent with the earlier agreements that you have approved. In other words, they hit the 1476 target during the time period of that 8.5 years. In other words, the measurement of the cost at the end of the 8.5 years is 14.76. There are lots of pieces that were ins and outs of the collective bargaining agreement. The GWIs are roughly similar to the other ones that you have seen. The union was advancing an equalization of salary scales between the college and the county. That was accomplished through a number of concessions. The principal one was a change in the health plan for both actives and retirees from the existing Empire plan to a new vehicle, relatively new vehicle, underneath the same umbrella of the state civil service, which is something called the Excelsior plan. That generates savings for the county. It impacts some of the cost sharing with respect to the employees, and there's a mitigation provision of a fund that will help alleviate the impact on the actual rank and file. The agreement has some other provisions that are important, increasing the workday for those employees who were working less than 7 hours to an extra 15 minutes a day. There's a provision that got some attention, which has to do with the vesting period for county service for health benefits and retirement, going from 10 years to 20 years. Various other provisions. The second portion of the contract, which is the last 4.5 years, are 2.85% increases on 13-month sequences and then a 15-month sequence at the end to equal this 4.5-year period. Also, the last 40% of the equalization of the salary scale. I know it's a lot of information that I'm piling in really quickly, but so the fundamental takeaway is that the first portion of the contract, the 8.5 years, is consistent with the other agreements that you've already approved. And the last will probably, we intend to set the pattern for future negotiations at the county. And
Right.
questions?
Sure. And just to be clear, but all the members have received the details of the MOU in advance, so had an opportunity to review it and ask questions along the way. But in terms of the 13 years, so just so people understand, so we're already some 5 or almost 6 years into the first phase. So when will this contract now expire?
2030.
2030. Okay, just so we're clear on that. And
Which otherwise would be 7. That's the whole point, right? You're going back and forward.
Right, but the basic configuration of the first part of the contract is the
Understand.
same as the one you've already
No,
seen.
no,
Right.
I understand. Mr. Chairman, with compliments to our council and staff, and as well as those to the folks working for all the parties to the agreement, I would move that we approve this MOU.
Is there a second?
Second?
Yep, and I guess what I would say is, you know, yes, thank you, Gary, great work, working with the county and the unions, being creative, coming up with solutions to difficult problems. I think that needs to be recognized. But at the end of the day, it's providing a level of certainty for not only the workers, but also the county and the taxpayers. So something that everybody can plan around without having a lot of the uncertainty that they've had now up until this point since December of 2017. So great job by all, so thank you.
I think before we vote, Dr.
Yep.
Zasso needs to make some
Yes, hi, just as a matter of transparency, as a physician on staff at the medical center, I am a member of CSEA, but I had nothing to do with the negotiation. I've checked with legal counsel, and I am clear to vote on this matter.
And your CSEA is a separate contract. This is not covered, your
Separate
contract
bargaining
is not
unit.
covered under this.
Yes.
agreement.
Can't hear.
Do we need to hear that?
Yeah, council pointed out that it's also a separate collective bargaining agreement.
There's no I feel, as general counsel, that there's no conflict with member Zasso voting, because even though he's a member of CSEA, his CSEA unit is a different bargaining unit from that which we're approving today.
Okay. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
The next item is retention of certain professionals to assist in the evaluating the potential tender offer transaction. Jeremy, you would
Okay,
Kindly-
I'll try to be brief, and to help me be brief, I'm going to actually read something that I've written here.
This is new.
Usually I'm
No,
extemporaneous.
brevity, not
But
the.
the brevity will also be there. Because of unusual dislocations in the taxable and tax-exempt markets, NYFA has been presented with an opportunity, two proposals, that would allow NYFA to finance with new tax-exempt bonds a voluntary tender by current bondholders of our taxable 2021 bonds. In order to do that, we'd have to pay them a slight premium over what they would get in the secondary market. Even if we pay this slight premium to encourage people to tender their bonds to us, we feel there'd be a net benefit to NYFA of approximately 3%, which would be in the range of $3 to $6 million of present value based upon the amount of bonds we're soliciting tenders from. This transaction would be led by the two firms that brought us this idea, which is Loop Capital and Bank of America, representatives of whom are here today. And it would not take place unless there were savings from the tenders, and we got sufficient number of tenders. Although even if it didn't take place, there might be some nominal costs because we have to proceed with setting up the transaction. Have any questions?
And just the idea that it's not entirely risk-free.
It is
So
not entirely
that the public
risk-free
is aware
because it
we would-
depends on, unlike other transactions where we've been permitted to automatically call in bonds and people had to give us back their bonds, these are bondholders who are voluntarily tendering their bonds. And to get them to tender their bonds, we have to give them a little vig.
But
And
we
so-
may incur exploratory or other administrative costs of a not terribly significant amount, but certainly of an amount that if none of them tender,
Right.
we would then.
Or we had to pay them too much to get them to tender,
Right.
to make the transaction worthwhile. But in order to set up the tender, we have to do some preliminary work, et cetera.
Are any other questions? I mean, I would just say, again, this is, trying to be not only creative, but apparently this is not just novel to NYFA. This is something that is happening today in the marketplace because of where rates are and the differential spreads between taxable rates and tax exempt rates, and when these bonds were issued at their rates and where the market is today. And at the end of the day, savings are savings, and I think the thing to do is when the market provides you with savings, you take them. So,
Right. Consider no harm, no foul. We consider this to
and
be,
for the risk, it's worth, the reward is worth the risk that we would be taking.
the reward
if
would
it
be
failed.
multiple times the risk, and we feel there's a fairly small risk of this not coming to fruition. But I had to make you aware of that, since I'll be hiring professionals to work on the transaction.
So any other questions for Jeremy? Or we have our underwriters here. If anybody wants to ask them questions, they're available. If not,
I'm assuming they wouldn't commit to, they're not going to guarantee anything here in a public meeting, so we probably won't ask them to. Is that fair?
but I would make it clear that they will not be paid
Right.
if the transaction doesn't happen.
Right. The risk
So
is
they
on
are
the insurance.
incentivized to make it happen, otherwise
Yeah.
they get nothing, right? And they're not in the business of not getting paid.
Not for long.
So I like the fact that they're incentivized and their interests are aligned with ours.
Okay?
No other questions?
Moved.
The motion?
Made.
And is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Great, thank you, Jeremy. Oh, you're up and again.
Next item?
Yes,
We're going to have Carl do the next item.
okay,
We like to spread around
okay.
credit.
Thanks.
Item number
Thank you,
6.
Carl.
Substantially smaller.
You're being asked to consider and approve a contract with Alvarez and Marsal, a healthcare consulting firm with whom we'd like to independently verify the financial condition of the Nassau Healthcare Care Corporation, a covered organization under the NIFA Act. The NHCC has received going concern opinions from their independent financial auditors for the past 5 years, and it's our belief that they can't continue their operation without significant financial support in the very near future. We'd like Alvarez and Marcel, who NIFA has engaged 3 years ago in a similar capacity, to verify our belief and consider what actions, if any, we need to take. This engagement will be performed on an accelerated basis and billed on an hourly basis not to exceed $250,000, plus disbursements and administrative fees. The chairman may increase that contract amount to $350,000 if he considers the increase to be necessary and appropriate. Can I answer any questions before requesting your approval of this contract?
What's the due date? When do they owe it back to us? What's the timeline for the engagement, do we know?
I believe they gave us a 13-week timeline. I think the engagement is supposed to be like a 4 to 6 week engagement.
So in this year, it would occur before the end of the year, theoretically? or wrap
Before the
up
end of the year,
relatively.
correct.
Well, I hope they get done before the hospital runs out of money.
That's the point, right? Yeah, time is
So-
of the essence.
So
This
let's
is
get
not-
it going.
right.
Yes.
Part of how fast this will get done depends on the cooperation. with
As,
the
as with all things Nassau
Hospital.
Healthcare Corporation, it depends on a willing
They
counterpart.
guesstimate it may take 4 to 6
Right.
weeks, but it all depends on how fast information goes.
Well, we'll implore with the hospital to make people and information available as quickly as possible,
You may wanna put
given
on
the
record
urgency
also
of the,
that you notified the chairman of the hospital, and he was
I did.
willing to,
Yeah.
have them.
Do we need to issue an order concurrent with this so that they really know that, I mean,
It's
We
my
can do that.
understanding that they are aware, of Alvarez and Marcel, wanting to come in for an additional engagement, and I've been told that they welcome that.
yeah, and I think it's gonna be good for ultimately the hospital too, because as
Oh, no.
we consider solutions, sources of money from the state, federal government, whoever, having the independent financial control board confirm or have their own view as to the current situation in the hospital, I think can only be of value.
And Alvarez knows that we may share the information with other entities to help.
Yes.
can I just, and this is an operational thing, can I ask that the staff have a communication flow with Alvarez so that we know if there is any non-cooperation, that we can quickly meet and actually issue an order if we need to?
Because Carl has dealt with the hospital more than any of the rest of the staff, he's going to be the liaison on this transaction and the point.
I just think we should be prepared to add enforcement to that if we have to. Because it's not exactly,
Agreed.
this is not like a situation where people can, we have the luxury of dawdling.
I agree. The time is of the essence and is real urgency.
I'll move it, Mr. Chairman.
And I've been getting information from them on
Sure,
a, on
great.
a regular basis, so
Move.
this won't be a stretch at all.
Made and seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Next item, Martha, you're gonna come and present? And I guess I would say, should we be considering the 4 items or 5 items all together?
Martha will be grouping them together.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we do have some questions around that.
Yes.
Okay,
And,
so-
Ken
yeah.
Arnold from the county is
Okay.
here, so
Okay.
he will be able to answer
Some of them
those.
seem identical because they're all maximum panel. You're creating a panel.
They all
of
have the
contracts.
same scope, they were all they were all under the same procurement process. There were 17 vendors that submitted proposals, 10 were awarded. Out of the 10, 2 have been approved by the board in the previous meeting.
Remember that.
And right now, we have 4. I know there is 1 in the pipeline, and the other 2, I guess, have to be presented
You're
to the
essentially
leg.
creating a panel of service providers that you can draw upon as needed, it seems.
Right. Well, that's.
That is
so-
correct.
So that's the question that we wanted
So
Mr.
Ken-
Arnold to speak to, because what we're basically giving here is sort of a blanket authorization for a certain amount of money. You know, this is on-call, not for a specific project or task identified at this moment, but as it comes up. So the concern I would have, other than them going out for a specific project with a proposed scope of work, with a contract that would come to this board, we're giving them this blanket authorization. So I want to understand a little bit better, when opportunities come up, how do you do what I call like a mini bid off of this, off of these value on-call contracts? What is your procedures, process by which to do it, so that we can at least have some comfort knowing that there is continued competition beyond this as work becomes available, so that it's not just divvied out as
Okay.
decided?
Well, thank you for asking those questions. So we do a mini bid procurement. Ken Arnold, Commissioner of Public Works, Nassau County. So we do a mini bid procurement for 95% of all solicitations or work assigned through the on-call contracts. We will send out a proposal to all the firms. They will submit cost and technical proposals for our committee to review. The Office of Inspector General sits on those committees and oversees them, not oversees them, monitors them,
Yep.
is a better term. And then that committee will make the recommendation just like we do any other open RFP. The only difference is because they're all pre-certified, to do work, there's not as a lengthy review of their firm background. We've done that work.
We've already done that,
So it's
yeah.
more focused on the task being requested for that work. The only exception to that is if there's work that they've done on the same project and we're just continuing the work, we'll do a determination whether it's in the best interest of the county to continue that firm on that second phase of that same project. That happens very rarely. The procurement policy requires authorization from both the chief contracting officer and the deputy county executive when we do that type of thing. But that's a very minor part of what we do. Over 95% of our work is all procured through an open solicitation through the mini bid process.
Yeah, and I think that's just the important thing we want on the record, is that even though we're giving you this blanket authorization, that there is a continuation of competition as work
Yes.
becomes available.
So there's an intra-panel bid process that gets you to the. Right?
Yes, we set up, just like we would do an open
And they all
RFP.
know that, so they all know they have to do the best they can.
Yes, and we do this for all our own, not just traffic. If this body sees buildings, CM, or any of the other ones, it's the same process.
Do they all provide the same discipline?
They all were pre-qualified to do traffic engineering and construction management services, all associated with traffic, safety, traffic, construction work.
And typically, what do you think the contracts range?
I mean, for the individual assignments,
Yeah, absolutely.
typically,
I know it's difficult, but
they could be very small. If we're doing traffic studies and surveys, we ask for a specific area to be done. They could be in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. A design contract and study could be $500,000, $300,000. If they do a CM project, those are the largest projects because they can span a couple of years. A lot of CM projects we'll solicit openly, but on occasion we will go through the on-calls and use them. They usually could be upwards of $1 million.
So you will actually do CM contracts direct with one of these as opposed to going out individually for an RFP?
It depends on the type, you know, if it's a smaller construction, we may. If it's something that has an expedited schedule to it, we will. Most of our state work, which is most of our traffic construction, is state funded. Those usually go out to open RFP because state requires a certain type of solicitation to be reimbursed. So any state work, which is most of my traffic construction, probably 80% of it, because we get a lot of money from the state for that type of work.
State DOT, is that what we're talking
Yes,
about?
it's a federal pass through the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program.
Okay.
Yeah.
You still have CHIPS funding, or?
CHIPS, it's not the same. CHIPS is funding that we can apply to things we've already done, right? There's requirements how you do it, but you don't bid a job with CHIPS.
Right.
You know, we find work that we can fit in the category that would be
Right.
reimbursed.
And then, just as a side issue, another issue we had with Andy, but just to make it clear, if you do a study, and that study results in a project, right, that study can be capitalized and would be paid for from bond proceeds, but the next time bonds come before us, if you've done a study and that study doesn't result in a project, that study should not be capitalized or paid through borrowed funds.
Yeah,
That should be expensed.
I've been talking to Andy and Steve Conklin about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna enforce that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you.
So
Appreciate
the
it.
items that are gonna be approved are gonna be 22923 NMP Engineering, Architecture and Land Surveying, 23123 Lewis McLean Associates, 23923 Greenman Peterson, 23823 Hardesty and Hanover. They're all for 10.5 million each, and the term is 5 years.
For us, that's items 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, right?
Correct, yes.
But just another question for Ken. Ken, do you require any other, like, minority, veteran-owned participation on any of these deals?
So all our contracts have hard mandated goals, which is usually state-funded work or federally funded work. We have our best faith efforts. So a firm that looks to subcontract out some of this work, we would ask to see that documentation that they showed efforts to look at. If they're doing all the work internally, I mean, we're not going to ask them to subcontract that work to meet any type of aspiration. But if they come back and say they're hiring a traffic counting company, which there's a lot of MWBE firms that do that because that's a niche, we'd ask to see that they reach out to those types of firms.
So with the subs? Yeah.
Subcontracting, yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you.
If you're looking for a motion for items 7
Yep.
through and including 11, I'll move those as a group.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. The next item, Martha?
Is Basilico Civil Inc. This is a contract again with the Department of Public Works. The vendor was selected through an open competitive bidding process. The county received 4 proposals and Basilico was the lowest bidder. The term is 540 days from the notice to proceed and is valued at $8,397,521.60. This is a construction contract to resurface the travel lanes and shoulders on Wanto Avenue from Sunrise Highway to Hempstead Turnpike. The contract will be funded with capital proceeds. Approval of this contract does not guarantee future borrowings authorization.
We'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? None, motion carries.
Can I speak to the contractor about exactly when they want to do the part that's right at the base of my block?
I talked to, you have to talk to him, you gotta talk to
Public
Ken.
Works.
If you don't mind, because
You gotta talk to
that's
Public
between me and the pizzeria and the Chinese restaurant. It's an important
We're
concourse.
gonna need letters on that one.
You'll see message signs should go up.
All right, exactly, right.
Okay, second to last item, Carl, are you gonna present for the
Stratosphere.
approval of selection of Stratosphere Multimedia, provide webcasting related services? No offense to our webcaster tonight, he's done a great job chipping in, so don't take it personally. Carl?
You're being asked to approve a 5-year contract with Stratosphere We will record, webcast, and electronically store NIFA board meetings, which can be viewed on NIFA's website. NIFA issued an RFP and posted it on the New York State Contract Reporter, as well as creating an online outreach program and reaching out to our contacts at the Empire State Development Corp. We received 2 responses, one of them being Stratosphere, who will charge $33.75 per meeting for the services mentioned above. Can I answer any questions before requesting your approval?
Any questions? None, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And
Move
with
to
that,
adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
All right, we are adjourned, we got a lot done and pretty
Yeah.
efficient, so good job, everyone, the staff. Did a
15
great job,
contracts
thank
in a
you,
month.
Thank you,
appreciate it.
staff.
Yeah.
All right.
And this-